Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, February 14th, 2022, we're continuing our coverage of the ongoing crisis between the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And as always, first we're going to kind of jump right into some of the mainstream media and not so mainstream media news reports that are coming out of the region, and then kind of delve into and talk about some of those topics that we're looking at. So first, this is out of Metro UK. Drivers stunned into laughter passing huge Russian convoy advancing on Ukraine. Now, in this specific video, if you decide to go in and watch it out of Metro UK, what you'll see is a column of what appears to be Russian National Guard forces. So these are separate from the actual ground forces component of the Russian army. These are the forces that would be utilized to come in behind Russian army, regular ground force formations and be utilized more of as in a counterinsurgency and or occupational type role. They also have the ability to conduct special operations tactics as well. There are units obviously based near Moscow, such as the 604th or Red Banner unit that could be deployed in some very high intensity direct action role. So not sure if that unit has been deployed as of yet, have not heard that, but a wide variety of National Guard units are indeed being deployed in the current crisis, which is a little bit different than some of the buildups that we've seen in the past. This is out of the Independent. Russia could invade Ukraine almost immediately, Truss warns. Good old Liz Truss and her vast knowledge of events taking place in Ukraine. Probably not. Let's see, what else do we have here? Let's see here. We have this is a late report that was kind of discounted, reference a potential, the Ukrainian government coming out and saying that they may back away from their NATO aspirations, but that appears to be, they appear to be stepping away from that rather quickly right now. So it's a conflicting report on that. Devon Live, American B-52 bomber soars over Devon as Russia-Ukraine tensions rise. The Spectre, what really happens if Russia invades Ukraine? And more U.S. fighter jets arrive in Poland. That's coming from The Hill. The Globe and Mail, Russia Parliament to discuss draft bills on Eastern Ukraine region recognition. That may become very important in what's happening, depending on what the Russian Parliament does, and obviously that may be rubber stamped in terms of what we're looking at in terms of looking at pretext operations. Reuters, UK Johnson says Russia still has time to step back from Ukraine crisis. Reason Americans are tired of war. They don't want one in Ukraine. And it just kind of goes on and on and on in terms of what we're seeing as in terms of both the buildup and the possibility of direct military action. Here's an interesting one. We keep seeing this, and again, I don't know why they, meaning they, the media, keep reporting this analysis. And I think this has to do with some of the quotes that General Milley made, and I really don't agree with this analysis. How Russia may launch a lightning strike to seize Kiev, and that's from the Evening Standard. So again, let's look at that a little bit. So we do see a deployment of a fairly significant force construct in Belarus. I've gone over this a couple of different times, and if you want to, please feel free to go back into some of my previous videos, and as we look at what the Russians are deploying in especially southern Belarus and other areas of Belarus as well, which could in fact at some point, I believe at least, be utilized against the Baltic states. But again, we're talking about this supposed lightning drive through the areas such as Chernobyl, the Pripyat area, coming down and making a rapid advance towards Kiev. Now, Kiev is a massive city, and there are quite a few assets that the Ukrainians have put in place to defend Kiev. So, an attempt to seize Kiev would be a very quick and bloody affair. And I believe that initially, and I could be wrong on this, that the Russians will try this in stages. And depending on the success of each stage of said operation, they may continue on. And again, the Russians are putting in a huge, massive force construct, both in the north to the east, that could threaten areas such as Kharkiv, and then obviously in the Crimea as well. So yes, there are quite a few options that Putin is putting in place. Now, the question is, will he act on all those options, or is he attempting to divert forces in other areas that could, in fact, lessen the threats that he would face in other areas, such as an operation into the just to the west of some of the eastern separatist areas. So that's a very good possibility. But again, if you look at these, an attack or move on really any of Ukraine's major cities, again, Kiev, we've looked at this before, a massive city with a population who has proven itself in the past, at least. If we look at some of the Maidan rallies that took place in Kiev, and the amount of nationalists that really come out to support the whole concept of Ukrainian sovereignty from the Russian Federation, the Russians are going to have a nasty fight on their hands, and again, not just from from the Ukrainian military, from the Ukrainian National Guard, from the Ukrainian territorial defenses, but just ordinary people that are going to inherently come out and take up arms and attempt to fight the Russians. So this concept of this 48-hour, 72-hour lightning blitzkrieg into Kiev to seize Kiev, I don't think is realistic at this point. Could we see that eventually happen? Yes, we could, but I think that would come after quite a bit of softening up in terms of the use of air power and other weapon systems the Russians have at their disposal. But again, the concept of a blitzkrieg-like ground operation, shooting south to seize control of Kiev. I think we're fighting past wars, and given the urban buildup and the way that looks right now in Kiev, and some of the capabilities that exist that the Ukrainians will have in terms of anti-tank guided weapon systems and other systems that they will have deployed that light infantry units can utilize, it's going to be very, very costly if the Russians attempt this lightning fast operation to seize control or envelop Kiev and kind of cut it off. Even if we look at Kharkiv, again, huge city, and I think you really need to go back and look at the history of war that has taken place in these areas, and not just the level of opposition that the Russians will face, but I think if you also go back and you look at World War II and the cost that the Russian society bore to excuse me, to retake Ukraine from the Nazis, from the Germans in the 40s. Obviously, I think you'll have a better appreciation even for the Russian side of this conflict, and kind of look at it from a kind of a better perception of what the Russians are looking at. I think a great book that is out there, a good read from at least the Russian side in terms of looking at World War II, is the book Russia at War. Older book, released in the 60s, but it was the reporter was there on the ground through much of in the Soviet Union during the Great War. So you kind of get that perspective. And again, if you want to see it from kind of the other side, and especially the cost that the Russians bore in some of its activities and actions in Ukraine. Now, with that being said, you go back before that and into the Stalinist takeover of the Ukraine, then obviously it starts to flip, and you kind of see it from the Ukrainian side as well. So it's what I would define as a gray war, and again, depending on the side that you look at it and whatever perception you're looking at it with, through whomever's optic, it is not black and white, and both sides truly have legs to stand on in terms of what they're looking at in terms of this possible conflict, which is very important to look at and understand, because that creates intent, and it creates a will to fight, and that's really really important. In any kind of aspect of whatever war you're looking at, and quite possibly that could or may not occur in terms of the history, especially between Ukrainians, the Russians, going back to the Soviet times. Again, I would definitely say go back, look, read, and understand what we're looking at here. But again, the Western media, especially the United States intelligence services, CIA, NSA, what have you, are really calling this. They are adamant about believing that something big is getting ready to happen. On the other hand, there's a bit of a different perception inside of Ukraine, especially with the current leader of Ukraine. Now, I don't know if that is just him not wanting this to happen and him being way over his head in terms of what he's looking at. I mean, the guy's an actor, right? Probably no business being the head of a state, but he is, and it's fallen into his lap. And unfortunately for him, he's really probably not built to deal with this, and he's probably dealing with it the best way he can. And that is kind of going into this stage of denial, if in fact we do see a military operation. Again, still mixed on this in terms of my opinion. There's a couple of different things that I'm looking at that still uh, makes me believe that it's not going to happen, but at the same time, I'm seeing things that indicate that it entirely could occur as well. So again, it's just something that is really almost impossible to call at this point. But if it does happen, obviously we'll be covering it here and looking at the military side of this very, very closely as the military operations continue, if it in fact the balloon goes up and we do see a major war in Europe. That's all we have for today. More to come. Have a good day, everybody.